Welcome everyone to the American Planning Association St. Louis Metro Section Public Advocacy webinar today. We will be discussing revolving funds for community reinvestment. Before we get started, just going to do some housekeeping. We have a couple announcements and events coming up. Board nominations are open till May 30th. So if you're interested to join the board, you have until May 30th to apply. For more information, you can visit the American Planning Association Metro Section's website. We will be having our planner coffee chat on Friday, May 31st. We meet at Richmond Heights Bread Company if you're interested to come. And we meet there at, I believe, at 8 a.m. So if you're able to come on the 31st, we have our planner chat at Richmond Heights Bread Co. Lastly, on June 14th is going to be our summer picnic. It'll be from 11:30 to 1 p.m. It's going to be at Delmar Divine. It's free, but space is limited, so please register. Lunch will be from Deli Divine, which is included. We will be having Maxine Clark as our speaker. So to learn more about Delmar Divine, please sign up today for the summer picnic, which will be June 14th. So that's our housekeeping for now. I am proud to introduce our moderator today, John Ferry. John was named 2019 Young Economic Development Professional of the Year by the International Economic Development Council as one of the 40 rising stars under 40 in the global economic development profession in 2017. He worked for the St. Louis Development Corporation for 7 years, where he developed a new incentive evaluation model that has been utilized to evaluate over $7 billion in projects in the city and was key to the negotiation and reduction of incentive outlays by more than $75 million. In May 2017, John presented this model at the American Planning Association National Conference in New York City. He also served as project manager and co-author for the city's equitable economic development strategy. John has founded 2 companies, Model City Solutions and the Chess Tales. Model City is developing software to guide investment and incentives, use decisions for municipalities, developers, financial institutions, and state agencies. And Chess Tales is an ed tech company creating children's media that teaches kids executive function skills through the combination of chess and stories about the game as experienced by the pieces on the board. He also serves as senior associate for real estate at Washington University. Please welcome John Ferry as our moderator. Thank you, John. Oh, you're on mute, sorry.
Thank you, Rachel. So I'm going to keep my my introduction really brief here because I want to leave as much time as possible for our incredible panelists. I'm just going to basically set the stage, provide a little bit of a framework by talking about what is a revolving loan fund and why would we want to use revolving or redevelopment loan funds. So first, a revolving loan fund is a sustainable financing tool used by communities to provide loans to businesses, individuals, or importantly, to their own agencies for economic development purposes. As borrowers repay their loans, the repaid funds are recycled into the fund, enabling it to continuously support new loans and stimulate local economic growth. So there's 4 primary reasons I'm going to touch on, and our panelists are going to really fill in more of the detail on this about why communities might want to consider redevelopment loan funds. First is the multiplier effect. The needs of most communities, including nearly all the municipalities in the St. Louis region, far outstrip the resources that they have available. As a result, cities need to make their money work smarter if they are to maintain infrastructure and services at present levels. As we will see from our presenters, other cities have accomplished this objective using revolving loan funds. A second is organic growth. One-time major investments, whether it be a big infrastructure project or a mega development, make a big splash in the headlines but they are generally insufficient to sustain the economic health of a community. As we will see in these presentations, diverting funds into a revolving loan program can support organic, small-scale growth that form the building blocks with which we build back our communities over time. Third is they can be targeted specifically to community needs. Revolving loan funds can be tailored to address the specific economic challenges or opportunities within the community, whether it's revitalizing a blighted area, supporting key industries, or promoting innovation and entrepreneurship. The flexibility of a revolving loan fund allows communities to allocate resources where they are needed most. By targeting investments strategically, the fund can maximize its impact and drive positive change in the community. And fourth, they can be used to reduce tax incentive reliance. Revolving loans are a great tool for filling funding gaps in redevelopment projects. As such, they can be used as an alternative to tax incentives in filling a project's financial gaps, which can further improve the fiscal health of cities and school districts. So with that, I am going to introduce Sarah Beddinghouse. Sarah is the development manager at 3CDC, and she oversees the development of high-profile mixed-use historic preservation projects in Cincinnati's Over-the-Rhine neighborhood and their central business district. 3CDC is one of the most successful and prolific community development corporations in the United States, and I'm excited to let you guys see the kind of work that they have been doing for the last 20 years.
Thank you. I appreciate that kind introduction. I'm going to share my screen here. And go full screen. Okay. Can everyone see and hear me okay? Okay. So 3CDC is Cincinnati Center City Development Corporation. I'll tell you a little bit about kind of what we do and how we got here, why we were created, and then I can dive in a little more specifically to our revolving loan fund and how that has enabled our ability to complete this work. So we're a nonprofit real estate development company and finance organization, and we only work in 2 neighborhoods. We work in the city's central business district and then the historic district right next door, which is called Over the Rhine. A lot of people who are not from here always ask, how did Over the Rhine get this funny name? Basically, when the city was settled primarily by German immigrants, they would work near the river and in factories in the central business district, and then they would cross over the Miami-Erie Canal into the neighborhood where most of the tenement housing was. And when they crossed over the canal, they said it was as if they were going over the Rhine. So although the canal is not here, it's now a street called Central Parkway. It's kept that name. So you can see the proximity of our central business district to the Over the Rhine neighborhood. And really, we do a lot of things that a traditional real estate developer would not do. We're mission-based. We create and manage great civic spaces. And so many of our projects have centered around partnerships with the city of Cincinnati and our parks divisions. We have a whole staff here at 3CDC that is solely focused on managing these civic spaces post development. And they have totally different budgets, but they bring in and self-produce a lot of events and activities to bring people downtown and kind of keep feet on the street. We're also very focused on creating high density and mixed use development. So we want to get people on the sidewalk. We want to activate first floor storefronts with businesses and then increase population density by building residential housing on the upper floors. We want to preserve the historic structures and improve streetscapes in our neighborhood. Part of what makes Over the Rhine so unique and interesting is the historic character of this neighborhood. So historic preservation is high priority for us. And then we're also very focused on creating diverse mixed income neighborhoods supported by local businesses. If you come visit and take a stroll around the neighborhood, you'll see that we're typically not going after national tenants. You won't see Starbucks and Chipotle. You'll see small locally owned businesses, and you'll see all kinds of mix of housing types created. We've done single family market rate homes. We've done a lot of condominiums. We've done a lot of market rate apartments, and we've also done quite a lot of affordable housing units, which is our focus right now, given the market. Again, just to sort of set the stage of what we're looking at in Over the Rhine and what makes it special is it's a really dense, historically significant neighborhood. And you can see the scale. This is looking from the north south. You can see kind of where the neighborhood is in relation to the central business district. And the issue that we were really facing for a number of reasons is there were a lot of factors that hit the central business district and specifically Over the Rhine really hard over the last 125 years or so, really with the down point hitting around 2000. In 2001, there was a killing by a police officer of an unarmed Black man, which resulted in civil unrest in the neighborhood. And that really was the point in which corporate leaders and our city government came together and said, we need to do something about this, or it's going to start to trickle into the central business district and affect the ability to attract talent to the area. A lot of factors led to just a really incredible density of vacant buildings. And so I have some examples here of kind of the conditions that we were coming into, just lots and lots of buildings that for a number of reasons had been vacant for many years, subject to squatters, subject to vandalism, compromised structural stability. And this is on the left side, you'll see some typical building types from the neighborhood that were all vacant when we started. One thing that we were able to do is accumulate kind of land bank, high number of buildings in close proximity and achieve some efficiencies by redeveloping all of these buildings block by block. That made sort of a noticeable impact and also created some physical efficiencies and economies of scale, given the size of the buildings. On the right-hand side, you'll see the conditions of some of the civic spaces in our area. We had parks that even recently have been completely roped off and closed due to high frequency of criminal activity, shootings, et cetera, occurring in these parks. And then in the lower right-hand side, you'll see the site of the current Washington Park up until 2012, when we oversaw the redevelopment of this park, was a gravel parking lot in front of one of our city's most architecturally significant buildings. There were a lot of carry-out stores scattered throughout the neighborhood that were associated with high density of crime. This was very common. And then you can see just even more examples of sort of dilapidated buildings. This was pretty typical. So how did we get here and what do we do with these funds? So 3CDC wasn't established until 2004, as I mentioned, but prior to that, there was an existing revolving loan fund called Cincinnati Equity Fund. It was founded by 12 of the city's corporations. For a city the size of Cincinnati, we actually have a lot of big employers, Fortune 500 employers. And in the late 90s, mid to late 90s, they were trying to look for ways to direct investment into the central business district. So they put capital into a revolving loan fund that could fund any projects at the time. It was focused on downtown, but it was available to any developer that was interested in developing downtown. It had some mixed success. There were many projects that got done with that, but there were some that went into default and didn't perform as well as projected. So when 2004 came around, as I mentioned, a lot of the civic leaders and CEOs of large employers here said, we need to do something about Over the Rhine to save our downtown. And so they created Cincinnati Center Development Corporation to sort of lead the development effort of some strategic projects downtown. And they were entrusted with management of the revolving loan fund, Cincinnati Equity Fund. What that did was it established a loan fund that was aligned with 3CDC's mission and made available to kind of kickstart the projects that were seen as high risk for a traditional bank. Following the success of 3CDC and Cincinnati Equity Fund, we've established 4 additional funds. So because Cincinnati Equity Fund has been performing well, we've been able to reach out to the same investors and have them put forward additional investments. So the loan funds are managed by 3CDC with oversight from a board of managers and an investment committee. And the borrower is always 3CDC managed real estate development project entities. So the simple way to think about it is I am employed by 3CDC and I work on the real estate development team, and there are people on the other side of my office who are also employed by 3CDC. When we do a real estate development project, we'll have a LLC, say 15th and Vine Development LLC, be the borrower from CEF, and the development staff would propose a project to the board of managers and investment committee to take out a loan from Cincinnati Equity Fund. The loans are typically very generous terms, so they range from 2% to 4%, depending on what the market is doing. We have the ability to request deferred interest on these projects. The interest that the funds earn can be used by the board of managers to pay management fees, or it can be redeployed as capital. So in other words, they can take that interest and put it back into the fund and re-lend it. We have also very flexible terms, so anywhere from 2 years for a construction project all the way up to 40 years to enable more favorable amortization terms. And we also have the ability to subordinate this debt. So when we're putting together capital stacks, a lot of times we're able to get third-party lenders interested because they will be in a first position in the capital stack. So the mission-driven funds, because the CEF funds are really aligned with the work that 3CDC is doing, have been really critical in allowing us to take on debt on projects that would be considered high risk by a traditional lender. Especially at the beginning of 3CDC's work, a lot of the banks, there were no comps in the neighborhood. And so the banks were really hesitant to put out construction loans or long-term debt. And so CEF really filled that role, kickstarted some of the projects. And then as we've been able to complete more projects, we've been able to attract a little more interest from traditional lenders. As I mentioned, the more favorable rates and terms allow us to reduce financing gaps. So I'm still able to approach CEF's board for my projects and get loans at 2%, whereas if I were going to a traditional bank, I would probably be looking at about 7.5% right now. So that enables me to borrow more and therefore reduce my financing gap. Because we manage these in-house, we're able to provide expedited loan closings when necessary and lower transaction costs. So if we're comfortable with the history of the building, we may be able to waive environmental reports or other things that a traditional bank might require. We've also been able to expedite loan closings, so we might be able to attract, say, new market tax credits that need to be deployed in a timely manner that another developer may not be able to do if they have to negotiate terms with their own bank. I mentioned we can subordinate this to other sources. And the other thing is we can kind of use it as a stopgap. So we might have a project that's a little too risky for a traditional bank to take on, but we can put CEF funds into that project until the construction is complete, until it gets operating and we have a reliable cash flow coming in. At that point, we can approach third-party lenders and refinance, even though it may be at a higher rate. We can account for that in our initial underwriting. And what that does is it frees up funds from the CEF fund to go into other projects. So think of it as sort of a stopgap to get a project going until it can be taken out by a third party. Another thing that has been really critical as it relates to Cincinnati Equity Fund is one of the major loans that it has issued is a $30 million line of credit. And that allows us to be very strategic about the property that we can acquire. It's patient capital, so we can acquire properties that are strategic acquisitions for a number of reasons, be it geographically or if we're targeting a problem area, and we can hang on to it for a long time with low carry cost because the costs are really just real estate taxes, some minimal utilities, and then interest at just 2%. We can also borrow funds from the line of credit to stabilize the buildings. So because many of these are in such terrible condition, we can do basic repairs to the structure, put on new roofs, things like that until they're ready to be fully developed without having to go out and secure a standalone loan. As I mentioned, these funds are also available just for monthly carry costs and pre-development activities. So if we are in the feasibility phase, we don't have to seek a different pre-development loan to engage an architect, start doing surveys and other pre-development work. We can bill it against the line of credit. And then once we close on the full financing for the redevelopment of a project, all the costs that have been incurred up to the project's closing get paid back to the line of credit and then can be reissued for a new building and start taking on the same kind of activities. So you can see here that this $30 million line of credit has enabled about $114 million of work to be completed. What that has resulted in is about $1.7 billion in activity in the focus areas that we work in. So we have our own investment funds, but we've been able to attract a lot of other investment from conventional debt and equity, other public resources, and philanthropic sources. You can see here that we've had about a 4-time multiplier. So we have our initial Cincinnati Equity Fund capital has generated about almost $190 million in loans. And then after we raised the subsequent 2 loan funds to continue our efforts, we've raised $150 million that have resulted in $600 million of loans. Just kind of a quick snapshot to give you an idea of the 1.7 billion that we've seen spent in the neighborhood has resulted in all different kinds of asset types. We have civic spaces, we have apartments, condos, parking. As long as they're aligned with our mission, this is something that our funds can help us achieve. And then just to kind of drive home the point, here are some before and after shots that you can see the impact that we've had on the neighborhood over the last 20 years or so. This was an old historic building traditionally used to house paint and now it's retail and office. This was a building that most of the building burnt down. We were able to save the facades of the building and then put in new office building essentially as infill along the backs of the buildings, but still utilizing the front. This row of buildings was redeveloped into retail on the first floor and then about 50 apartments on the upper floors that are all affordable housing at 60% AMI and lower. And then we've also used these funds to help spur some redevelopment projects. For example, Fountain Square, which is our city's kind of center city park, was one of our first projects. So that was redeveloped to modernize and really develop activities to bring people downtown to support all the other investments we're making. And then I know I showed you before, Music Hall adjacent to Washington Park had been an asphalt parking lot in the front of it. We now manage Washington Park and bring thousands and thousands of people downtown every year for free events like opera in the park and workout classes. And we have a splash ground and all kinds of great activities here. We've also built a full-length pool in cooperation with the city of Cincinnati. We have free day camp, swim lessons, and we operate this in partnership with the parks, allowing day rates and sliding scale memberships based on income. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you for your time and thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Sarah. That was just a tremendous presentation. The kind of work you guys are doing is very inspirational, and we will get to questions after everyone else is presented. But with that, I'm going to introduce Courtney Pogue. So Courtney has been in the economic development profession in a variety of critical leadership positions in various cities in the United States. Really starting as Deputy Economic Development Director for Cook County, basically Chicago. And then he also served as Economic Development Director for both Nashville, Tennessee, and the city of Dallas, Texas. In each of those positions, he's basically been either involved with the management or the implementation of different types of revolving loan programs. And today he is in charge of he's the senior director, I should say, of the Supporting Empowered Emerging Developers Academy for Grow America, which was formerly known as the National Development Council. So I'm going to turn it over to Courtney, and he is going to share with us some of the things that he's been working on lately.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Courtney Poe with Grow America, formerly the National Development Council. I've been with NDC roughly about 2 years now. My background, as Jonathan kind of laid out, I've worked in various communities around the country as relates to economic development. I'm overseeing various programs from housing to small business loan funds to training programs for emerging developers. So today we're going to talk about revolving loan funds and what Grow America is actually working on right now, and some of the things we're doing from a standpoint of affordable housing, but also for entrepreneurs. So those of you who don't know, Grow America's been around, one of the nation's oldest nonprofit provider, community development, technical assistance, and training. Around just 1969, based on the premise of homes, jobs, and community. So our goal is really to foster the creation of homes in the sense of affordable housing, creating quality jobs across the country, but also making stronger communities. We provide these services via affordable housing, job creation through training and small business lending, and advancing the local communities through investment in social infrastructure. We partner with local and state governments across the country and help nonprofits to build their communities and economies via our programs and training assistance. One of the main things that we do is really technical assistance and training. As far as it relates to training, we have trained over 60,000 professionals since our existence. We have awarded roughly about 6,000 certifications as it relates to affordable housing and economic development. We also provide technical assistance. So we provide technical assistance to hundreds of communities across the country to help communities design, execute various strategies relates to economic development, related to affordable housing, but also other programs and projects to make sure that the city or communities are utilizing public and private dollars in a very economical fashion. We also identify and secure structures of public and private financing and help develop projects from concept to completion. Through our small business platform, we provide economic development, small business lending, with a focus on women and minority-owned businesses. We utilize various programs from the 7A and the 504 program from the SBA to facilitate this. We also have a corporate equity fund. So we are a syndicator of low-income housing tax credits. So we have finance and syndicated tax credits to build hundreds, if not thousands of units across the country as relates to affordable housing. And we're also a developer. A lot of people don't realize that we actually are a affordable housing developer. So in communities that lack the capacity to build affordable housing, we'll come in and actually become a developer and partner with the local community and nonprofit to actually help facilitate the development of affordable housing. We're also working in the space of public-private partnerships. So we help build social infrastructure, help build community facilities, such as a city hall, a library, or a fire station. And we are a allocatee of new market tax credits. So we have had several allocations of new market tax credits from the Department of Treasury. We have dispersed those dollars into scores of projects across the country to help facilitate hundreds of millions of dollars of development projects, such as community buildings, libraries, schools, grocery stores, you name it. So we have done a number of new market tax credit projects, and we also provide training for new market tax credits. So if you're looking to understand new market tax credits, we actually have a 3-day course which walks you through the actual new market tax credit process and helps you understand the various alphabet soup that makes up the new market tax credit process. And this is a map of our impact for America. We have been in hundreds of communities across the country, including Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. We provided technical assistance, we provided loans, provided grants, we managed programs for different cities. We also provided training programs to various communities as relates to housing and economic development. So revolving loan funds, one of the things we are working on in partnership with a number of our partners across the country is a revolving loan fund training program. We're working with the EDA to manage that program. And so some of the information that we're discussing today be in short form. However, if you're looking to learn more about revolving loan funds, we actually have a training program geared towards supporting communities to make sure they're learning about revolving loan funds, how to set up the loan fund, how to manage the loan fund, and make sure they're making the right structure with the actual loans. That's the community's practice and tied to the EDA. So what is a revolving loan fund? A revolving loan fund is a pools of capital lent to small businesses or real estate developers to spur economic development or build affordable housing. The loan fund is replenished, its principal and interest is repaid, and funds can be lent back out. Typically, loan funds can be capitalized with government financing sources. For America, with extensive experience and expertise, that's not just set up loan funds, but we also have managed successfully a number of revolving loan funds across the country, demonstrating our commitment to fostering economic growth. As far as relates to a loan fund can be utilized for the various factors from setting up property acquisition, doing property construction, property rehabs, ensuring equipment. As far as loan fund, capital for a small business, utilizing a loan fund, and of course, research and development. Really, the gist of a loan fund, it's a really tying it back to local control or local loan committee to oversee the fund. But also, when you set up a loan fund, you want to make sure that you're supporting small businesses, entrepreneurs, but also look at ways to support workforce development initiatives by utilizing a working capital line of credit and capital loan, utilizing a revolving loan fund. A revolving loan fund is a comprehensive solution, provide a steadfast support through the entire real estate process, from construction to completion of a project. So in looking at a loan fund is really a gap filler. These products can be designed to support businesses that are not being served by traditional capital, typically businesses located in certain areas. So looking at the various data points from the SBA, urban housing, urban development, or there's one at third party provider called Policy Map. You can pull some of the data and see what some of the loans are not being dispersed. Therefore, setting up the actual revolving loan fund geared towards supporting those areas of underinvested areas. Typically, businesses that we are targeted for these loan funds, from startups to existing businesses, manufacturing versus service retail, based business versus attracting the business, the businesses less than 5 people, or mainstream businesses. A loan fund can also support maybe a conventional loan as far as providing senior capital, or it could be subordinated debt, therefore a loan in a second position for a project, or you can actually provide a loan guarantee. Also provide additional collateral, allowing a borrower or developer to secure a first mortgage or other sort of forms of capital for the project. In our revolving loan fund can be traditional debts with a fixed payment, or it can be a quasi-equity structure, such as mezzanine financing, or it could be outright equity. It really depends on the risk appetite as far as when you set up your loan fund. And one of the things for a revolving loan fund, it can be capitalized with grants and loans from the state or federal government, which is a HUD loan, which allows the community to borrow against their community development block grant capital. It can be general fund dollars from the local government, county government, to actually facilitate the structuring of the loan fund. Or in one case, actually utilize expiring tax increment financing districts to support the actual loan fund. Revolving loan funds can be structured based on matching principle. Sources must always match the uses. So if you're looking to set a loan fund for long-term capital assets, it's best to structure the revolving loan fund with a longer amortization period and term. If you're looking to finance working capital lines, which is typically a shorter period of capital, you typically want to structure the loan fund to have a shorter expiration date, but also make sure the loan fund is being capitalized with a source of capital that has a shorter duration or time period. Therefore, managing what we call duration risk. To ensure the sustainability of the fund, it is possible through the implementation of a robust policy and procedures manual, but with really effective underwriting. I can't stress that enough, to have good, solid underwriting when you actually set these revolving loan funds, to ensure that when you set these funds, to make sure that the actual program is being managed properly and that the actual loan fund can be replenished. So some of the uses for a loan fund, you really want to assess the needs of the community. So understanding if there's a need for property acquisition, understanding the needs that there's for the construction, rehab, for machinery and equipment, working capital, but also looking at ways to support permanent working capital needs, along with a business buyout and, of course, research and development. It's best to go out and look at some data from the SBA to see how loans are being dispersed in parts of the community. We can look at HUD and see what type of block grant funds are being dispersed throughout the community. And there's also a third-party provider, which I spoke about earlier, being Policy Map, which gives an overview of bank loans, SBA loans, and HUD loans, and loans from the community development block grant applications to see how capital is being dispersed within the community. Therefore, justifying a need to set up a revolving loan fund to meet the needs of the community. In capitalizing a revolving loan fund, you can utilize block grant dollars. Of course, you can utilize the EDA grant to set up a loan fund. You can go to a bank and actually secure capital from a bank as far as borrowing money from a bank. utilizing loan capital. So for example, you can borrow from the bank at 2% to 3% to make these loans to meet their CRA requirements. They lend the money back out at a 6% interest rate, therefore recouping a spread between 3 and 4% back to the loan fund. Banks also make investments under what they call EQ2. So they can utilize equity positions within the loan fund to help capitalize the loan fund for the actual project. And then, of course, cities, county, and state governments can also capitalize a loan fund with general fund dollars. I spoke about before, expiring tax increment financing districts. For the past 4 years, a lot of funds have been set up utilizing PER dollars and CARES dollars have been utilized. Communities can also borrow against their community development block grant pool. Which is simply a HUD 108 loan program to help capitalize a loan fund. I bet you've done it in a few markets, being Chicago and Dallas. We can also pair the revolving loan fund with new market tax credits to create a fund. It's very promising and creative. There are a few community development entities around the country actually have set up loan funds to help capitalize businesses, but also support real estate development projects. Another source of capital for a revolving loan fund could be foundations, provide capital for the loan fund. And of course, there's national CDFIs such as LISC, Enterprise, Capital Impact, and Grow America to help capitalize a loan fund. And of course, in some markets, you utilize bond proceeds to set the loan fund for various capital items. So some uses for affordable revolving loan funds include affordable housing, typically they're supporting a loan position for a project, real estate loans for small businesses. Those loans could be in a senior or subordinated position, or we can do mezzanine financing, which is more or less quasi loan, quasi equity, kind of in the middle. One of the things we just did at Grow America, we set up a pre-development capital loan fund for projects that for students who went through our academy. And you can do construction loans utilizing a revolving loan fund. And it comes down to small business loans. That'd be a focus on underserved communities, therefore meeting community needs, but also one of the things that a revolving loan fund, as far as administrative costs, you can utilize capital to set up a training program. So that training program can be geared towards small businesses and emerging entrepreneurs, such as the Grow America Entrepreneurship Academy and SEED program, which I'm going to talk about right now. So Grow America over the past 2 years has set up the Supporting Empowered Emerging Developer Program, geared towards supporting emerging developers across the country. We have set up academies in Omaha, Tulsa, Detroit, Houston, San Antonio, San Diego, and Atlanta. And we have a few more academies coming up this year. Basically, what we're doing is creating a network of graduates across the country that can work together as far as relates to real estate development, but also diversify the real estate development industry. So basically, we take our national coursework and curriculum to make sure it has a local flavor. We set up our academy based upon 3 phases. We focus on community design with local customization. We provide classroom training. And in that classroom training, we provide an actual capstone project. And also we provide ongoing technical assistance and deep dives geared toward helping the students over the long term. Speaking about the community design, we work with a local partner, set the steering committee to make sure we're addressing local issues. We set the various panels to make sure we're reinforcing the in-course or in-classroom training. And of course, we have a focus on cohort selection as far as the actual academy itself. As relates to a classroom training, we provide 5 days of intense classroom training. So we walk the entire development process. We talk about the actual budget for a development project. We talk about pro forma development, setting up the actual capital stack, which may be a senior debt, subordinate debt, mezzanine capital, best utilize various funding pools, which may be a revolving loan fund. We identify the gaps that may happen with certain projects in certain communities and ways to fill those gaps with various tools. This relates to economic development and affordable housing, and then also identifying local funding options such as grant dollars, home dollars, tax grants, LIHTC programs, and of course, revolving loan programs. Then, of course, discuss the interim and permanent financing being construction financing and the takeout of construction financing with permanent financing. And at the end of the 5 days, there's a capstone project which students present to a panel of judges to review the project to make sure we're reinforcing the actual instruction provided in the classroom. Once we kind of walk through the actual classroom project, there's ongoing technical assistance. So that technical assistance is basically one-on-one. We focus on the student's project, but we also provide quarterly deep dives. For example, in the deep dives I spoke about a month ago was focused on raising equity capital for a project, underwriting, lender underwriting for a project, how local housing tax credits may work for a project, or new market tax credits for a project. Then, of course, there's a national network of emerging developers we want to create, and they all have worked together. We're seeing it across the country from the various students that have been through the academies, particularly Atlanta, Houston, San Diego. We had actually had Academy Milwaukee, which some of the students have been very engaged throughout this process. The Academy is an 18-month program, so beginning in month 1 and going through month 18, we take the students to a long-term relationship, so it's not a one-and-done relationship. It's an ongoing relationship for 18 months. We actually walk through the process. And then, of course, Grow America, we have a number of training programs as it relates to our house development finance professional certification. We have a rental housing development finance professional certification. We have our economic development finance professional certification. We provide various training programs for professional development. One of the programs is a revolving loan fund program. It's being done through our community of practice with the EDA. And of course, we have our supporting empowered emerging developers program, along with the Entrepreneurship Academy, which is actually taking place in St. Louis as we speak. So with that being said, I think that wraps up my presentation, and looking forward to your questions.
Courtney, thank you very much. That was incredibly informative, and I am very grateful for your expertise that you've shared with us today. Again, we'll do questions after all the presentations. So next, I'm going to turn everything over to Ned Stabler. So Ned serves as the Vice President for Economic Development at Wayne State University in the Detroit region, and as President and CEO of TechTown, which is Detroit's most established business incubator and accelerator. He leads both organizations' efforts to strengthen the Detroit region's neighborhoods, businesses, and leaders, overseeing a range of activities around innovation and entrepreneurship, business development and attraction, talent retention, transit and mobility, and placemaking. Previously, Ned served as the Vice President for Entrepreneurial and Capital Services at the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. In that role, he was responsible for the oversight of the Michigan Strategic Fund Board and the 21st Century Jobs Fund, a $2 billion 10-year initiative to transform the state's economy. As part of these efforts, Ned led this investment and management of $600 million of state funds into entrepreneurial companies, venture capital, and private equity funds and strategic service providers. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ned.
Thanks, Jonathan. Let me share my screen, and we will get going here. There we go. So you might be asking yourself, why is someone who doesn't run a revolving loan fund speaking on a panel about revolving loan funds? And that is exactly what I asked when they asked me to speak on this panel. And the answer is that while I would certainly not say it's easy to do the real estate or to put the fund and provide capital to emerging developers or businesses together, and you saw those beautiful before and after pictures, so you can see this is really hard work. It's even harder to fill those spaces up with operating businesses, with successful entrepreneurs, and that is where we come in. So I want to walk you through a little bit about our history and what we do to contribute to this ecosystem in that way. And I think, St. Louis and Detroit, there are a lot of great parallels there. You start looking at the population decline and the resulting commercial corridors, having empty storefronts, and you'll see, I think, there really are a lot of great parallels. So let's talk about it. Techtown was founded in about the year 2000, originally created to commercialize technology out of Wayne State University, a big public R1 research institution here in the heart of Detroit, as well as Henry Ford Health System, which is right across the street. So originally our goal was technology transfer. The name was Techtown. There you go. And very quickly we expanded beyond the university and the health system. The city and the state asked us to provide technology acceleration services more broadly. So really quickly in 2000, we started those services outside of the university and hospital community. In 2004, we opened the building we're in today, which we'll talk about in just a second. And about 6 or 7 years after that, we realized the process we were using to accelerate technology companies, so we use what we call now a version of lean startup, would work whether you were doing a tech business, whether you were building a mobile app or a medical device or a pharma product, or if you're doing a more traditional small business, a restaurant, a coffee shop, barber shop, service, home-based. Really the same process around customer discovery, product market fit, and business model development worked either way. So in about 2012-ish or so, we began to support non-tech businesses. So really what we say our job here is to break cycles of intergenerational poverty, generate equitable community wealth through entrepreneurship. And let's talk a little bit more about what that looks like. You can see here that we are a part of Wayne State University. Wayne State is a public research university. We do about $250 million a year in research expenditures, but also we have a mission as an urban university to be a university of access. And you can see that from the students that we bring in, as well as the results and change in their life. We are the #1 university in the state and a top university in the country for economic and social mobility. You really see inflection points. The students that are coming through Wayne State University start from households. They come from households with a lower median income than any other public university in the state. And frankly, households that have lower incomes than any of the community colleges in the state, except for Wayne County Community College, which is the one here in Detroit with us. So really we're working with some of the folks that are coming from more challenged backgrounds and changing their trajectories forever. And that informs the work here at Techtown as well. We want to make sure that the work that we're doing is not just for rich kids with hoodies and Apple earbuds, but actually for Detroiters. And we're changing the community. As I said, we've been doing it for 20 years. You can see our lovely new anniversary logo here. Have to say we are part of a broader district and initiative. There are a number of other sort of innovation-based resources right here in our footprint, and that's an important part of the story, is that we are working to build not just individual businesses and entrepreneurs, but also a culture and a place where this type of high growth and higher prosperity jobs and industries are created. The building itself is about 135,000 square feet. It is specifically designed on the first floor is co-working, event, and meeting space that is open to the public, again, by design. The goal is to get more serendipitous collisions happening. That is more potential investors, more potential funders, more potential employees, clients, whatever it is, to be running into each other. And you can see that is something that happens here. I'm happy to say that average of more than 10,000 visitors a month is now up more like 15,000 visitors a month. It is still down from COVID when we were almost at 20,000 visitors a month. So we're getting there, getting back to where we were before. But this is an important piece of the pie. We tend to break up our work into 3 areas. I mentioned already tech-based programs and also small businesses, what we call them, but it's more traditional, think brick and mortar type businesses. And then entrepreneurial education spans across that. So that's the webinar, seminar, the professional services network that we have to help you on your way, or the coaching and things like that we have as well. And I'll talk a little bit more about them. What I will say, however, is these things are blending more and more. The difference between tech and non-tech, every business at some point is a tech business at this point. If you're not doing e-commerce, if you're not reaching out to your customers on digital platforms, you're really going to struggle in the 2024 economy. And, you know, I like to say all the time, we get all caught up in Uber or, you know, Amazon. These are the big tech companies, right? Yeah, Uber's a taxi company. Okay. Amazon started as a bookstore. Yeah. Did they use, and obviously now with AWS and the cloud, et cetera, and even some of their hardware products, you know, they've expanded beyond that. But, you know, ultimately they use technology to leverage very traditional businesses and scale and grow. Just last year, we worked with over 1,000 entrepreneurs. We helped them raise over $23 million in startup and growth capital. And most importantly to us, I said we wanted to be supportive of the community that we're seeking to serve, not, you know, folks from outside of town. 85% of our entrepreneurs were entrepreneurs of color. Just over about 2/3 of them were Black or African American. 2/3 of them use she, her, hers pronouns, and about 11% are immigrants. This is a result of intentional work. It did not happen overnight. About 6 or 7 years ago, we were held up as a model of how to do entrepreneurship for Black entrepreneurs nationally by a group called ICIC, the Initiative for Competitive Intercity, which is run out of Harvard Business School. And back then, our tech programs were 18.6% Black entrepreneurs. And they were holding this up as a national best practice. We were incredibly embarrassed about that, being in the city that is 76% Black. We embarked on a project we call Radical Inclusion in Tech to identify and remove the barriers for our programming for entrepreneurs of color. And I'm really proud to say that it's been very successful, and you can see some of those numbers here. So what are we actually doing for these folks? Well, we're called Tech Town. We have a whole suite of tech programs. And like I said, what we do in tech, we do in non-tech. So on the tech side, we have accelerators. We generally call them start studios. We work really at the top of the funnel. You have an idea. We're going to help you do that customer discovery and business model fit to see a product market fit, to see if you have a product or an idea that's really going to work. We'll help you build MVP. And then we'll put you into a variety of incubators. And the difference that the distinction we draw between an incubator and accelerator is that an accelerator is, think of it like a class. You're going to come in for 12, 15, 20 weeks with a specific cohort of people. You're going to move through learning the same sort of curriculum. You will have your own individual coach, but generally speaking, your business is getting the same set of advice and training as you go through. And then on the incubator side, it's more individualized. You're going to get a coach for the next, say, 6 to 12 months. They're going to build out an individualized milestone plan for you and take you through it. Calling you every week or two, depending on the program, to say, hey, how are you doing with that? You said we were going to start working on this prototype. You said you're going to work on your website, whatever it is. Did you do this thing, et cetera? We have some funds that we can help you to accomplish some of those milestones. And we have a portfolio of service providers we call our professional services network, who are sort of vetted experts in a wide range of fields, whether it's lawyers to help you protect your intellectual property or rapid prototypers, marketing experts, whatever it is, to help you on various aspects of your business that we can refer to for low bono, no bono, pro bono kind of services to help there as well. Similarly, we have the same set of programs on the non-tech side. So our accelerator there is called Retail Bootcamp, and we do a few of these every year. It's a 12-week cohort-based program for folks that are getting ready to open a brick and mortar location. So think a bookstore, a restaurant, et cetera, et cetera. We've been doing this program for over 10 years, and almost half of the businesses that have gone through it are now open in brick and mortar across the city of Detroit, and very successful program. Same model, however. After you go through that class, we don't kick you out the door. We don't say, hey, thanks a lot, here's $5,000, knock yourself out, good luck. We give you a coach who's going to then follow up in the incubator model with what are the next 3 to 6 months of plans for you that you need to accomplish. Oh, you need to work on merchandising. Oh, you need to talk about inventory control, whatever it is. We're going to connect you again with an expert and a plan to help you accomplish those goals. For brick and mortar, sometimes it's important to get real experience popping up your location. And people think, oh, pop-ups are easy. I've got an empty storefront. I'll just have pop-ups in there. It's actually really hard to program a pop-up. We have a couple of people, that is literally their job, to program several pop-ups across the ecosystem here. So for example, the Fisher Building is one of our iconic office buildings. It also has a cool theater in it. We worked with a developer there that had a lot of empty retail space. we run a permanent pop-up space there. So we have businesses that will open up there for 3 months or 6 months and test out the location, the concept, their merchandising, their marketing, their inventory, their staffing. And I think 3 of the businesses that have been popping up in there have now opened up in their own retail spots in the building because they realized that was a good location for them to be. And they developed enough client base to make it worthwhile. And then I want to mention right down below, because you see the golf check there from Comerica Bank, we also run something called Hatch Detroit, which is a multi-phase competition where we end up giving out $100,000 to what we say is the best new retail concept in the city. We just had our hatch off last week and gave $100,000 to another company. Some of these folks are restaurants. Bounce Around the Motor City there is literally a balloon and party store. It's going to be Detroit's first one of those when they open up later this summer. They just won last year, and it's taken them over a year now to get open. But we've got a couple of James Beard Award nominees and folks like that have gone through that program as well. Elliot, I see your question about if anything is happening like this in St. Louis. I do not know. I don't know the market in St. Louis so well. What I will tell you is products like in programs like Retail Bootcamp, we have gone to other communities, Providence, Rhode Island, Boston, and we will happily train the trainer and help transfer this knowledge elsewhere, into other communities to do things like this. This is a little bit of secret sauce. There are other folks in communities that do classes. There are a lot of places to get a class, but the process of providing coaching, et cetera, over the longer period is very resource intensive. Not impossible, and I think it's a model that needs to be adopted more, but it isn't done very often. I mentioned entrepreneurial education, so let's go into some of that. We have a couple of different levels. So one, and all of this is absolutely free to entrepreneurs, strategy sessions. You just want to come in and talk to one of our staff strategists about your business. We use this a little bit as a triaging metric. So you come in and we ask a bunch of questions about where you are in your business development. And from that, we might send you off, refer you to one of our partners, or bring you into one of our programs. Our Ask an Expert, we have a couple of hundred folks, again, a wide variety of skills from accountants and lawyers to drone guys and AI experts. This is for a one-off. You want to come and meet with somebody again for free for 30 minutes to ask them, hey, what's a good point of sale machine? Do I want to use Stripe? Do I want to use Square, et cetera, et cetera? Again, I mentioned our professional services network, which is essentially the more significant engagements where we're going to help folks with services to fill out their milestone plans. And then, of course, webinars and seminars and all the various sort of training series things you would expect. So over the last 16 years, I can't go all the way back to 2004 because folks weren't keeping the data so well back then, but we've worked with over 6,000 businesses, have raised more than $400 million in startup and growth capital, and created thousands of jobs. So one of the questions I get often is, wow, how do you do this? Where's the money come from? How do we start something like this up? I will tell you back in 2013, 2015, this had a budget of about 5.7 million. It actually dipped a little bit by 2014 or 15. It was down to about 4 million or so. This year's budget is just over $18 million. So you can see where the money is coming from. A lot of it is coming from foundation and individual contributors. We do have a revenue model where we try to make money off of our space. That's a little lower than it was in 2019 still. We were about 4 million back then. But it's almost recovered to those levels, but a lot more government, a lot more, foundation support, mostly because we've had a track record of doing this really, really well. We collect a lot of metrics, and so you can see the revenue growth and of our clients, but also you can see the net promoter score, the customer satisfaction scores from folks are really off the charts. They really like the work that we do. We try to practice what we preach. We teach build, measure, learn, and lean. So we're always trying to do that ourselves and doing continuous improvements to make our products better. And I think our funders really appreciate that. And then, as Courtney mentioned, with CARES and ARPA and all the various federal programs that came about in 2020 and 21, we've been able to get some government grants as they filter through the system to help there as well. Oops. And that is me.
Thank you, Ned, very much. So I would just want to first of all say thank you to all of our presenters. I'm very appreciative of their expertise, and I just can't stress enough that we've just heard from some of the leading experts in their fields in the United States. So I'm quickly going to turn to a couple of questions that I have, and just wanted to also just make one other point is just that hopefully one of the takeaways you guys have seen from this is that revolving loan funds are something that can be sort of a catalyst to help generate growth in our communities, but they're also part of a holistic plan. That's a holistic effort. Hopefully that came through in each of the three presentations. So quickly, I'm going to turn to Sarah and ask a couple quick questions. The first one is, so prior to the establishment of 3CDC, you mentioned that there was already the existing fund and that there were a couple of defaults and things that sort of, I guess the risk management led to the creation of 3CDC. So given what you talked about with risk management and your efforts to try and be able to extricate 3CDC's funds from projects, what steps does 3CDC have to take to help ensure that you'll be able to successfully attract the market financing that is needed to remove your funds so that you can recycle them into the next project?
Yeah, I mean, I think that some of the keys here are that CEF is making loans on projects that are managed by 3CDC. So there's some risk mitigation there because their missions are so aligned. So I think that it's been a critical step that it has a targeted mission. So it only does real estate loans. It only lends in to the neighborhoods where, we care about small business development, but CEF is not making small business loans, for example. So I think that the targeted approach has been really beneficial and has been one of the pillars of success. And then, I think as we have done more and more of these projects, we get a better sense of kind of where the risks are and we can underwrite to that. And so, typically what we're trying to do is get the project under construction and up and running. And then once it is, we can reach out and try to shop the project around to traditional lenders to get them interested. Again, because we're managing the revolving loan funds, there's a lot of flexibility there. So we might be trying to take out all of the CEF debt on a project with a third-party lender, and maybe we find a third-party lender that's only comfortable taking half of that out. We have the flexibility to do that. So I think really, flexible and patient funds, but a clear mission for which those funds are to be used, I think has been really critical.
Okay, thank you. Second question is, if another community wanted to attempt to replicate 3CDC's success, aside from the pool of capital that would obviously be needed, what would you say are the keys to creating a successful revolving loan program like has been done for downtown Cincinnati and the over the Rhine neighborhoods? In other words, what are the pillars of your success?
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned previously, having a clear mission is really critical. Having trusted borrowers has been a big success for us. So because 3CDC staff is managing the funds on behalf of the board of managers and the investment committee, and our staff is also overseeing these projects, that's been a huge benefit. The role of our corporate community really shouldn't be understated. So the source of these funds is a little different than a lot of communities see. But the lenders, the investors in the fund have a vested interest in downtown. They're putting money into these funds because they want to see development happen downtown. But that also gives us access to a lot of really successful minds in downtown and great business leaders. And so I think that is another thing that we've done is we've kind of stacked the board with big shots in the business community. And again, I think just having a clear mission is another important thing for other communities to keep in mind.
Okay. And then the last question I have for you is, do you have any data by chance that would indicate how the development made possible by 3CDC's efforts have grown tax revenues collected by the city since you guys started 20 years ago?
Yeah, so, you know, before this webinar, we were talking about that, and so I've been kind of digging around and looking for data, and unfortunately, the data is pretty sloppy because we started from such a low point in this neighborhood, and 3CDC has surely had a huge factor in the neighborhood, but there's a lot of other things at play. We've had, you know, triennial property tax reassessments per our state tax code. We've had a lot of tax abatements put in place. We've had a lot of tax abatements roll off the books. We work in an area that overlaps several TIF districts. And so it's sort of a difficult question to answer, but what I can tell you is that in the 2 TIF districts that we work in, we have measured how much tax revenue we expect to go into those TIF funds as tax abatements roll off over the next 10 years. And we think there will be $20 million available there. So you know, it's probably several $100,000 per year of additional tax revenue collected. But again, it's a little bit difficult to measure because of the abatements and TIFs that are in place.
Okay, thank you. All right, Courtney, I'm going to turn to you. So first of all, you mentioned the importance of setting an investment or underwriting policy for the success of a local government or nonprofit run revolving loan program. Having worked in many cities across the US, are there any particular policy models for many of the cities you've worked with that you would recommend a community or organization look to when designing their own investment policy?
Sure. As a member of IADC and a board member of IADC, the National Economic Development Council, I think there are several cities out there. I've always a running joke with my colleague and the current board chair in Atlanta. We copy a lot of stuff from them. I think that's Atlanta has some good policies as it relates to setting up a loan fund, how to underwrite loans for projects and so on, both real estate, both small business, but also look at ways to support emerging entrepreneurs. I think Chicago has a couple of good loan policies as it relates to setting up capital geared toward the inner city, particularly on the south and west sides of the city. I think some creative things we did in Dallas of setting up a housing trust fund, utilizing expiring TIF districts to help capitalize that fund, support affordable housing. So I think there's some great models out there. I encourage you, the people on this call, to look at those models across the country. One of the things we're doing as an organization, being Grow America, we actually have a agreement with the EDA, a couple of organizations called Catalyze, and of course NATO, to actually have a community of practice. So we are training people on setting up revolving loan funds. If you go to our website, Grow America, and type in revolving loan funds and community of practice, you can see a place to sign up to actually sign up for the next training course to help you go through the actual process from beginning to end to set up a revolving loan fund. So that is part of our mandate right now under our community of practice to set up a revolving loan fund. As far as setting up policies, underwriting criteria, but also the types of loan funds that are out there. So we have a huge database. We have a training program. So I encourage you, if you want to learn more about revolving loan funds, to sign up at the Grow America Revolving Loan Fund Community of Practice.
Thank you. The next question I have for you. So in St. Louis, as in other places around the country, many minority emerging developers have sought to develop in their neighborhoods only to find that banks deny the financing because of insufficient collateral in the property. This is a phenomenon we often refer to as the appraisal gap, and it has stymied many potential developments in predominantly minority-owned neighborhoods. Could a small-scale emerging developer revolving loan fund be a solution to this problem? And if so, how do you think it might work based on your experiences in other cities?
I think that's a really a multi-pronged approach. I think from the standpoint of appraisal gaps and really to diversify the appraisal industry between the Appraisal Institute. They're looking at ways to diversify the industry. So there are training programs. But the last I heard, they have partnered with JP Morgan Chase to actually get more diverse individuals into the appraisal field. I think from the standpoint of the capital, uh, there's always a need of finding patient capital for developers. So one of the things that we did with JP Morgan Chase, we had academies in Atlanta, San Antonio, and San Diego. We utilized about $500,000 of capital to seed a pre-development structure loan program to actually help participants in the academy be the seed program to have some capital to help them start their businesses, do some of the actual sunk costs for projects, such as paying for the architect, paying for the engineer, doing the market study, paying for the option on the land. So that's one of the pathways. And I think the last component could really be the things I spoke about in my presentation. Revolving loan funds have been utilized to provide collateral support for projects, collateral support for entrepreneurs, and collateral support for emerging state developers. So there are different pathways to set up the actual loan fund, which could set up the address the appraisal gap, help address the gap in providing holistic development in certain communities. I think when you set up an academy like we have with Seed, supporting emerging developers, it needs to be paired with capital. And well, these various programs, it needs to be paired with a training program. What you see across the country, sometimes people may have a training program with no capital, they may have capital with no training. It needs to be paired together.
Excellent. The next question I have for you, Courtney, is so Grow America and the National Urban League recently announced the launch of the Accelerator Fund in St. Louis, which provides funding support for minority entrepreneurs and minority-owned small businesses. Can you tell us more about this program and if there are ways that cities can use their own funds to supercharge this effort to help more small businesses thrive in the St. Louis region?
Sure. We actually have a training program in St. Louis under my colleague Joe Gray, called the Entrepreneurship Academy. It's part of the academies. The students can actually get a loan. Once they graduate from the academy, the loan is between $25,000 and $100,000. The interest rate is 6.5%. The term can be for up to 60 months, and there are some personal guarantees tied to the loan. Program is focused on emerging developers or emerging entrepreneurs, minority and women-owned business enterprises. And so one of the components of that is really the training program, but the loans can be forgiven if you're paying on a set schedule, say in year 3, if you're doing the proper things such as one, filing all your paperwork for your taxes, paying your taxes, you create and maintain the jobs you said you're going to create as far as the actual loan itself. Then, of course, you complete the Entrepreneurship Academy. So you have a loan that's in year 3, you have all the things you outline. That loan can be forgiven in year 3 if it's a 5-year loan to 60 months. So instead of paying for 60 months, you're paying for 36 months. But you must do these steps to make sure that the loan can be forgiven.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. The last question I have for you, Courtney, is so in your presentation, you mentioned that Grow America provides training to communities for how to establish revolving loan funds. Could you share first how someone might go about signing up for that training if interested? Is the training in person or virtual? And then if there was enough interest in the St. Louis region, could a class be organized for a group of practitioners in St. Louis?
As far as signing up for the training, you can go to our website, growamerica.org, sign up for the Revolving Loan Fund Community of Practice training program. I think there's a webinar actually coming up in a few days. Most of the training is online. Grow America or NDC has done a number of training programs in St. Louis. That was one of our main locations until things got shut down during COVID. We are in discussion to bringing some in-person training back. So there is an interest for us, at least Grow America, to actually come to St. Louis and provide some in-person training, both from a SEEK standpoint, supporting Empower Merchant Developer Program standpoint, for Entrepreneurship Academy, which we're actually running in St. Louis currently, but also from a revolving loan program standpoint to bring the straight programs in person to St. Louis. So I'm happy to discuss that with individuals in St. Louis as far as our training programs.
Thank you very much, Courtney. Ned, I'm going to turn to you with two quick questions. First of all, in part of your presentation, you talked about specific properties where you host many of your programs. Are your programs focused on specific neighborhoods or geographies within Detroit, or are they for any business located in Detroit? And if they are focused, how important is having a targeted geography to the success of programs like yours?
So originally they were targeted. So when we started our non-tech small business service programs, they started because we had grants for specific neighborhoods. And I think that was important as a way to build out the model, because what we discovered is you can't just parachute into a neighborhood and say, hey, we're here to help. To be successful, we had to work with the existing local CDCs in those communities to say, to be sort of the economic development TA provider. So they might be working on the real estate strategy. In some cases, they even said, hey, we have these storefronts. We need a coffee shop. We need a barber shop. We need X, Y, and Z. Do you have anybody like that? Or we're working with these entrepreneurs. Can you help them? And, these specific entrepreneurs. So that was really valuable. When we showed up in neighborhoods without that kind of partnership, it was a lot harder to get buy-in from the local community, to understand who we were. And, in a lot of underserved communities, people parachute in all the time, say they're here to help. And after, 12 months, 18 months, they disappear. And that just burns bridges for the future. So today, I'm happy to say that our services are available all over the city of Detroit, and across the rest of Wayne County now through some grants we've gotten from the county to expand that work, and from the state, because the model works. But in each of those places, again, we work with local partners to help identify entrepreneurs.
Thank you for that explanation. This last question I have for you: what type of coordination efforts does TechTown have with groups like Invest Detroit or the Detroit Development Fund as you provide technical assistance to small businesses? Are there ways that you work together to combine funding with technical assistance that helps to ensure better outcomes for businesses in the community?
Absolutely. I think the best practice national model is to combine technical assistance with lending. And in fact, there's been a lot of data work around, what makes businesses successful, especially, again, going back to trying to serve underserved communities when you have a lot of institutional barriers. When you look at where money flows, a typical experience, and we did this in Detroit, I'm sure someone on the call is thinking, when I say this, they're going to go, oh yeah, we did that, or we're about to do it. You have this notion that, entrepreneurs of color, female entrepreneurs have less access to capital. So what are we going to do? We're going to get a consultant in to map it out. And sure enough, what is the consultant going to tell you? You were right. There is less capital going to those folks. So what are you going to do? You're going to go and get someone like me, probably, to help those entrepreneurs to get you're going to go and get a CDFI, and you're going to say, great, access capital, give them money, right? And you're going to hire some banker, and folks are going to apply, and a year or two later, you're going to say, hey, man, I gave you $5 million to go, and you only made 3 loans. What's going on? And what's going to happen is the banker is going to tell you, well, these guys aren't bankable. They've got, whether it's an appraisal gap or it's they don't know what they're doing, they don't have personal credit right, et cetera, right? So then you're going to hire me and say, prep them, get them ready, build their loan packages out so that they can come in and get the loan. And sure enough, loans will start happening, right? Because we'll play the game, we'll get it done. But 2, 3, 4 years later, you'll go back and go, how come these businesses aren't as successful as other businesses? And the answer is that the most important time for a small business is not the 6 months before they get a loan, it's the 6 months afterwards, when the rubber meets the road, right? Mike Tyson always says, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. None of that is not any more true than for entrepreneurs. Everybody has a business plan of this is great, but when they have the money and suddenly your construction costs are coming in 20, 30, 80% higher than you thought, your landlord shorted you on something, it's taking you 6 months longer, but you're paying rent. When those things happen, the decisions that you make are what are going to influence you and in the future of your business. Did you take out more debt, and now your debt service is too much to cover the margins in your business and your cash flow? That's the time when an organization like ours can partner with an Invest Detroit, a CDFI, to provide those services to their entrepreneurs before they're 3, 6, 12 months behind on a payment, before they're dodging their lender's phone calls. You know, let's get with them on a weekly or biweekly basis to analyze cash flow, to look at what the revenue is, see where it's coming from or not coming from, and put a plan in place to fix it long before it becomes a problem for a lender.
Thank you. That was an excellent explanation. So Rachel, I'm going to turn it back over to you now, to see if there are any questions from the audience.
Most of the Q&A was answered by our panel, and the ones that weren't was just answered by Ned with his amazing explanation there on, you know, why they're investing in these businesses. So if there's anything missed, please let us know if anyone has any other questions in the Q&A. But other than that, it looked like all the questions were answered. So I just want to thank John for helping us put together this webinar and with this amazing panel. Ned, Courtney, and Sarah, what you guys are doing in your communities is spectacular, and I'm hoping we can add that here to St. Louis. We have a lot of great innovation here, a lot of great people with backgrounds and who's on this call today doing amazing things in their neighborhood. And I can't wait to see what else we can do in the next 2 to 3 years, especially with revolving loan funds in the city of St. Louis and our region. Again, thank you everyone for being here today. And if you want to learn more about the American Planning Association St. Louis Metro section, as I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, we are having our coffee chat on May 31st at Breadco in Richmond Heights at 8 a.m. if you want to join and learn more from our members and our board and how you can get involved. And we'd love to see you there. For now, you guys all have a great day and continue doing great things in your community, everyone. Thank you.